what is the revenue model for broadband? Where are you making money? Like what revenue is being driven by broadband today?
I think about this quite a bit when I used to be really happy with my Nokia cell phone, and Nokia owned that market. And look how quickly it changed. And so I started having discussions in public forums about, I don't know as a provider if we have a firm grasp of what the market is in the future, right? We just know it's needed. How it will be used, I don't think we have a firm grasp on that, because now you got people wearing watches to monitor their heart. I don't think we'd anticipated that 3 or 4 years ago. You know, there's applications that are coming down the pipe that totally unknown to us as providers. The point is we need to have that network ready for that, right? So it's not necessarily trying to anticipate everything in the future. It's trying to prepare us for the future, is the way I would put it. So I don't know if I can answer that question fully, other than saying we got to be ready, you know, and we got to stop having conversations about speeds and whatnot. We got to start having conversations about how future-proof we're making our markets and preparing our markets for whatever's going to come, because we're now seeing, I think everybody on the call can agree, you know, that we're now seeing the communities that have not been supportive or ready for broadband, I think is probably the better term. They're not ready. They don't have the ordinances in place. They don't have the you know, the infrastructure to work with a broadband provider, and they're being left behind, and they're not ready for this next wave. And the wave now is people moving into these towns from COVID, you know, the result of COVID, economic development. How does a business move to town? I view it as we just got to be ready to make that network available to whatever purpose in the future.
Yeah, I think history may be a good guide. I mean, you know, the electrification program in the 20s, look where we are. I mean, at least in the Northeast, we're still using the same goddamn poles. I don't know if I'm supposed to say, you know, get vociferous. But, you know, 100 years later, we're still using the same pole, right? And look at, if, you know, from 1920 on to now, look what electricity is doing. And that was the infrastructure that was set up. Or look at the national highway system in the Eisenhower days, like 1950s. And what do we drive on it that is very different than what was being driven on it in the 1950s? I think this is the same kind of societal trajectory, the infrastructure trajectory. You know, I'm sure in some Star Trek episode, this has been captured by Jean-Luc Picard and his team on what this all ended up being. But if seriously, we took a look at it, you know, they were walking around with tablets in Star Trek, and now we take it for granted, right? I mean, there was a replicator. Granted, it doesn't make us hot tea right now, but it does make us a bunch of 3D printed parts. So I think there's a nice little trajectory there, and I agree. I think it's really, really hard to sort of predict, and I think that's a fool's errand, right? We can get all nutty about what kind of hologram world we're going to live in and what kind of AR and VR we're going to do. That will happen. I think our job is to make sure that whatever is done is good enough for the next generation, the generation after that. And frankly, to also articulate that to the communities, because we feel that's our responsibility, right? We need to be able to make sure that they feel included in that conversation, especially from communities that have never been part of that conversation, whether they're communities of color, immigrant communities, or just communities that are lower on the economic scale, right? So we have to make sure that whatever economic divide that there is today, which is a large one, doesn't keep on perpetuating itself through the infrastructure.